Valentine's Day. Love is in the air. Probably. I mean, it must be somewhere. Not here, though. This video isn't very love-filled. It's actually quite the opposite, really. But still, just sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, a couple of years ago, I was in a god-awful relationship with a girl who I knew had a borderline personality disorder and was absolutely immoral. Every morning, I would run a mile from my house to hers and prop my body in the window to her room, and then leave when she let me leave. It happened to be Valentine's Day, and I was running back home from her house, on the phone in the cold. Recently, my family had been showing some serious concern for me, telling me how dangerous the streets were and how many people died. I ignored them, of course, because this girl had me wrapped around her finger. So I'm running. It's dark and freezing, and in my ear is the usual blend of insults and arguing when I hear someone yell, "Hey yo! Hey, who's that?" I stopped and turned to see someone walking from their driveway, eyeballing me suspiciously. I held my palms in the air as the universal sign for "I'm harmless" and said, "Nobody," before resuming my jog home. As I cleared a street, I heard the same man, this time more hostile. "Come here." I ignored him, figuring that he was going to mug me, which would be wasting both of our time since I was broke. He kept calling me, pursuing me through several streets until he changed up his yell. "Hey, you!" Again, I ignored him, but I stopped because I was out of breath from running in the cold. Then I heard 2 loud bangs behind me. I never believed anyone when they said that the world slows down if you're frightened or worked up enough. But I found it to be true immediately. My brain jumped to attention as I put together what happened. I felt a dull stinging on my hip and smelled something I only remember smelling from sparklers or near fireworks. I screamed "holy shit" at the top of my lungs and began running desperately, sprinting faster than I've ever moved before. I was running and tripped over some construction debris, but somehow managed to roll over and scramble into another sprint as I heard bang after bang erupt behind me. My phone flew out of my hands and down the street at some point. I saw a police car. I waved my hands and desperately screamed for this man to help me, as loud as my lungs would allow me, only to watch them take off after a van that fled the gunshots when I did. I got home and saw a line scooped out of my hip and realized that I'd have died if I'd have moved an inch differently. I never found out why somebody felt they needed to empty their gun in an attempt to kill some poor guy in a bad relationship, but I did learn a thing or two that night, and as you probably guessed, we broke up pretty soon after that. Number 2. I was working on Saturday in Tokyo as a private tutor for people whose native language is not English. One student I have regularly is a businessman in his late 40s. I normally dislike Japanese businessmen, but he's always been very kind and seems genuinely respectable. On Saturday, we were in the middle of a lesson when he suddenly began asking questions about my co-worker. I answered what I could about him, but I was a little bit confused, as I didn't think that this student had ever met with him or had even had a lesson from my co-worker. When I asked why he was interested, he answered, "Because I can see him through the glass behind you. He keeps walking by and talking to someone." But I don't think it's a student because there aren't any other students here right now. Is he alright? It's a little hard to focus when he keeps walking and talking. But this particular Saturday happened to be Valentine's Day, and my coworker had asked not to come in that day. I turned around and no one was there. Beside my students, I was alone in that building all day, and I didn't see or hear anything for myself. I was very creeped out and wary for the rest of that evening. Number 3. My dear grandmother had been suffering from ovarian cancer. It slowly consumed her for years, until her death on Valentine's Day 2012. She was on hospice in home, so at least she was in the comfort of her room, surrounded by loved ones when she went. She was the big boss, the head honcho. I mean, this woman planned out her own funeral, and made sure that everything was supposed to be when it was her time. My grandfather was always quiet and quite submissive to his wife, but they loved each other very much. Anyway, I don't want to call what I had a dream. I've dreamt before. I've dreamt of eating an entire box of donuts before. I've dreamt of being married to Tom Hiddleston, so believe me, I understand when I'm having a dream. And whilst this experience may have started off as such, it's certainly not how it ended. So in my dream, I had become aware that suddenly I was at my grandparents' house. They had it built before she got sick, and I spent a large portion of my childhood in this house. Every detail was intact. The matching set of green lazy boy chairs, the dining table, china cabinet. It was there, or so it seemed. My grandfather and stepdad were in the living room together. Grandfather was watching television, whilst my dad was trying to coax him out the house to get him to go somewhere. In this dream, they were vaguely aware that I was in the room, but I wasn't acknowledged. At this moment, my stepdad was crouched on the ground talking to my grandfather, who was in one of the green chairs. He kept saying, "Why don't you come with me for a bit? Then you can come right back." I got the sensation that she was in there too, but I couldn't see her. So my logical dream self said, "Well, perhaps you can catch an orb or something if you take a picture." So I raised my phone to take the picture, and when the camera turns on, she's right there. My stomach fell to the floor. I'm talking, I literally, physically became ill even after I woke up. She was sitting in the second empty green chair, with my grandfather's hand clasped in hers. It was almost as if she were comforting him. She was still bored from the chemo. I lowered my phone and said, "Hey, I see you, I really see you." At this point, it's like I'm on the outside looking in. I'm looking in disbelief at my stepdad and grandfather that have no idea that she's there. I keep saying, "Hey, I can see you. Why can I see you? I can see you." It was a very disturbing feeling. I knew that it was logically impossible. She couldn't be there, yet she was right there, ignoring my shouts. And it was at that point that I realized that I was dreaming. But I didn't understand why I was able to see her through my phone, and not without it. As I started out, I've had dreams of her before, but nothing like this. I woke up and was very, very concerned. My stomach had fallen to the ground. Even awake, I knew that I'd seen her, not dreamt her. At this point it was about 5 AM, and my alarm was about to go off for work. I needed to tell someone. My brother is in the Marine Corps, so I knew that he was over in Japan and likely still awake. I sent him a message and explained the whole thing. And then he shed some light on the experience, saying that it makes sense, that my grandfather never leaves the house, never. Nobody can ever get him to go anywhere. He just sits there all day, alone, and he thinks that the dream/vision I had was her way of telling me that he may be in that house, but he isn't alone, and that she's still there with him. Number 4. When I was in high school, I lived in a really small town in Texas. It was the kind of place where everybody was either related to each other or hated each other. I had no family there, so yeah, but I did have a pretty blonde girlfriend. And was pretty hated for that too. Nothing major, just petty harassment and the occasional fight. But it had been escalating. So that's why on Valentine's Day, my girlfriend and I decided to skip the school dance and just stay in and watch a movie at her house whilst her parents went out. It was just better to avoid trouble. We borrowed her dad's car, a little Honda hatchback, and went into town. We stopped off at the video store for a movie, and went to the Dairy Queen for some ice cream, and then were making our way back home. Now she lives in the middle of nowhere, in some woods along a lonely road with no streetlights. We're chatting, eating our blizzard, when all of a sudden a car comes up behind us. No big deal though. What was a very big deal though, was when the headlights flooded the interior of our car. I saw in the mirror 2 hands on the back seat, and a head coming from the hatchback part of the car. As soon as the lights hit, the head and hands retreated back down. A solid chill ran through the entire length of my body. I slowly reached down and pulled out my pocket knife. She saw me and asked me what was wrong. Loudly I replied nothing. I just have to stop at my friend's house real quick. She knew that I was bullshitting though. I didn't have any friends. I pulled over at the next house, came up, and jumped out the car yelling at her to jump out too. She jumped out in total confusion, and I flipped the driver's seat forward and lunged into the back seat in full maniac mode. He popped up like a little jack-in-the-box, empty hands waving, "Hey, hey, hey! So what are you all up to tonight?" It was some weird kid from our high school, who we had never, in our entire lives, spoken to before. Ever. I said, "What in the holy hell do you think you're doing in our car?" His reply was, I just thought you guys were going to the dance and I was just trying to hitch a ride." We sat there staring at him with our mouths open, wondering what to do. He tried to act really cool, and obviously we're in the middle of nowhere in some random person's driveway, so whatever he was planning was forgotten. We actually ended up driving him to the dance and dropping him off. The whole time he's telling us to come inside with him. Yeah, no. We dropped his ass off and noped out of there as soon as we could. As soon as he got out of my car, my girlfriend started crying and shaking. She was so freaked out. I have no idea what he was trying to do when the lights caught him crawling out of the hatchback. I hated that high school. Hey guys, it's Mort here and thank you so much for listening. I want to first of all shout out the amazing artist Angiexi, who made the thumbnail for this video. In the spirit of the season, why not show her some love? And check out her channel, which you can find in the description or wait for the link at the end of the video. I love her work and I know you will too. So, what are you guys doing for Valentine's Day? Any special plans? If you don't, it's cool. You can just chill here with me, and I'll tell you a story. But before we get to that, be sure to subscribe so that we can become even better friends. And you know what friends do? They like and comment on the video. Links to even more videos are on screen now. But for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.